Okay, good afternoon. This is Linda Pearl of One Quilting Circle, and I'd like to welcome you to today's live stream. This is Tuesday, the 25th of January. Another cold, gray, weary day here in New England. But if you are here and you're joining me, I do this every Tuesday at noontime at 2 o'clock in the East. And today I want to talk to you about the fact that I have got 5 questions to ask yourself when you are ready to get rid of the quilting slump, because this particular slump, it has been a while coming. Thank you. And it has been hard fought, but I am on the other side of it, and it feels really good. It's like a good de-stash mashup and such like that. So if you're interested in that, stay with me, and we're going to get into this in just a second. It's onequiltingcircle.com is the website, and there'll be a blog post going up today, and I'll link it down below that will give you the list for discussion that you can do and kind of figure out where you're going. So, okay. So, what I should have done, of course, and I'm typical Linda, I didn't do this. Let me see if I can bring up the questions and I can just sort of use them as a reference while I'm here. Yes. Okay. So, my slump that began the year of 2022. Um, so, first place I had to start and realize was the fact that this was organic and it was deep with me. So I had to start by asking myself a couple questions. Is there a part of the quilting process that you really enjoy and that it's your favorite part to play with? And in my case, the answer is yes, and it has to do with color and fabric and fun and thread. The other thing is, there a part of the process that you don't particularly enjoy? And yeah, judging by what was left, I was looking at doing, a lot of the issues related to the fact that I hadn't been practicing my machine quilting, and that's pretty much where a lot of the process stopped. Now, um, is this a new problem for me? Unfortunately, no, it's not. It's something I have known about. I need to make peace with this. Now, making peace with it means I either make space for it in my creative life and attack the problem, or I make peace with it by moving forward and saying, okay, I'm going to quilt by check, which isn't really something that I'm going to be able to do for the volume of quilts that I have. But what I had to do was I had to really recognize that this was not just, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. There was something literally holding me back. On the shelves behind me that you can't quite see, but up on the top of there are all my project boxes that corresponded to my list of UFOs for last year. Everything is, all the pieces for the project are in there, all the patterns that are in there, everything is done. It's labeled in really big letters so I can actually see it from down here. And in theory, it's just a matter of just picking it up and grabbing and going. And wasn't a lot of picking up and grabbing or going or doing anything. So, what I have decided to what I had done is that my quilting plan before this exercise looked like the laundry list of things that I hadn't done last year. And a lot of those all stopped at the same part. So I had to kind of dig a little bit deeper. And when I looked at them, the quilts that I was looking at working on were projects that I had enjoyed. I mean, nobody put a gun to my head, or, I had enjoyed the process and I had gotten to a certain point, and then they lacked a purpose. They weren't destined to go anywhere outside the quilt room, because they were not family quilts, gift quilts, baby quilts. They were nothing of that. They were not committed to the variant quilt auction. They were just projects that I had been working on. And I really, in looking at him, decided I don't want to finish them. And that's okay, because I have a plan for that. Um, so I took my list of UFOs that need to be done and I set it aside, and I took out another blank piece of paper And I started asking myself, what would you like to spend your time quilting? What do you want that week to look? What do you want your time to speak and look at? And what I realize is that there are techniques I want to take. There are skills I need to work on. There is a quilt that needs to be designed for my guild challenge, and I enjoy the design process. I enjoy the guild challenge process. In fact, I have an entire process. I have an entire trunk show that is designed that is devoted to my um, that is devoted to my challenge quilt. So the fact that we have a challenge quilt this year, a challenge in my guild this year, is something that I really want to participate in. So I have made space for that in my calendar. Um, I have also taken a look at the projects that I want to bring to market, the things that I want to be able to bring out, guild speeches I want to write, patterns I want to publish, and such. And those all need space. Those can't be at the back of the line. Those have to be brought forward and done. The other thing I realized is that a lot of the quilts that I had queued up or was going to work on, the fabric had been pulled. The design had been done, and in most cases, the piecing was done, because I enjoy the piecing process much more than I enjoy the quilting process. There's a reason that they all sort of languish on the vines when we get to this point. And so I'm like, okay. Although I subscribe to the theory that you finish what you start, had a loop in my head that I had to wait for that to go by, that you finish what you start and everything has a purpose to it. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the one that has to finish them. So my guild does, and like many guilds throughout the United States, we've still continued to be active, but we fund most of our operations through having a quilt show. And we are in an every other year cycle for a quilt show, and our quilt show is now 1 year overdue, and we have a date in September, but that's as far as it's gone. So we have a secondary thing that we have done is that we do a UFO auction, and that allows us to basically clean the stash through, move things through along and such like that, and the proceeds are donated to keep the guild running, which is fine. We are a guild that has been very active throughout the pandemic. We have gone to a Zoom format for most of the last year and a half. We started this year in person. We've now had to take a step back in January, and we have scheduled the February one to be a Zoom one, and we'll see where that goes. But we have an auction coming up, and this, sometimes you never know what's going to come through the door. So I have actually gone through my list of my 2022 UFOs, which is here, and I have figured out which ones I'm going to finish. Several of the ones that I'm going to finish are items that are coming to market. They have patterns that are going to be written. They have a number of things that way that are going to be done. The one that's currently under my needle is I need to go back to doing the discipline of doing the work to improve my quilting, because although I don't have a long arm here, I have a long bedded sewing machine is perfectly capable of doing 90 odd % of the quilts that I do, because I'm not doing a lot of bedside quilts. But I've got one under there. I'm doing the little bits and starts with it. I'm doing it in the morning because that's when my creative energy is there. After you have been, I not real motivated at 8 o'clock at night to sit down and quilt. I do much, much better with that at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I actually found that I enjoyed it. So I may actually sign myself up and go do another block of it over there that I'm working on. So with that being said, I've cleared space, and hopefully the person running the auction will return my email and tell me that, yes, she would love to help me lighten my load and clean my room. And that will help me get the items moving through and looking at the items that are left and figuring out, well, the items that are left, some of them have, one has the fabric, one has the quilt sample has been done, the pattern just has to be written. Actually, two of them are that way. That's a different creative process. It's not that you have the idea and have to make the quilt in order to do that. So that I'm excited about doing. Actually, I have another one that the quilt is going to get finished. Um, I have one that's on my design wall that is probably, of all the quilts that I've currently got in the sewing room, one of the ones that I'm most excited about, and is going to be a gateway to other things. That's probably going to be one of the ones that I am going to work on next, because that's ruler work and it's going to be an intense exercise for that. The other thing in looking at that is that I have all the tools here that I need. What I sometimes have to do is to look at them differently. I have a whole bin of quilt sandwiches, but the quilt sandwiches for practicing free motion quilting. I realize that that's why you do it on solid threads, because you can see what you're doing. You get a better understanding for it. So I've gone through and I've deconstructed some of the things and put different tops on them for that. So that will allow me to have a better understanding of exactly where I am, for that. I've also taken a look. I have, if you're new to the channel, I have one new project that I'm working on, which is what I called in 2020 and 2021. I called it the Never Ending Embroidery Project, which is now done. Um, it needs to be blocked and put together. And I saw something that sort of made me go, I want to try that for the border. So, um, and that's a completely different spin than I had seen coming. So that was it. Um, Now, part of this is looking and seeing as you're going through YouTubes or Instagrams or TikToks or anything else, and seeing that there are a lot of really fun looking patterns that are out there. I personally don't do real well with quilt alongs or sew alongs. Um, I tend to I tend to not be able to keep up with the pace, and then because of that, I fall behind and then get frustrated with the falling behind. And it's something that I have identified that with intention, I am going to pick the ones I'm going to run and the ones that I'm going to do and move forward with that. That's something I've got to get and go for. Um, and where was that thought going? That was going to, oh, the pattern that I saw that I really liked, that is completely, totally up in my wheelhouse because it's all scrappy, is the Exploding Heart Quilt Along. I have seen that with, I keep seeing this popping up in my suggestions for Instagram and whatever, and I really, really like it. The problem is the fact that I don't have, because of the size and because of the sizes of the blocks that you make when you make it, I don't have the bandwidth at this point in time to make this particular quilt. Doesn't mean I won't do it another time. Doesn't mean it won't be something fun to play with. Um, but I have an entire rolling cart of 2.5-inch strips that need to find projects for and use for. Throughout the pandemic, I've had this feeling like I needed to just sort of grab strips and sew. And it's the putting yourself in the machine and calming yourself down and such like that. The problem is that I hadn't had a pattern to be like working it, and I didn't want to just start randomly sewing because I could see myself randomly ripping later, and there's no point in that. I have identified where 5 of those quilts are going to go, and I have identified, I think, a pattern. So we may be making progress on that score. And if that's the case, then I'll have it set up where I just can sit down and do a basket of them and kind of get back into the habit of touching the thread and the fabric each day. This is not necessarily an easy process, and I had to really look at it. It wasn't a matter of I wasn't motivated to do it. because my creative juices got a jolt in December. But it went in a completely left-hand field. It went with kitchen and cooking and Christmas and all of that stuff, which actually is still paying dividends at the end of January. Um, but it's a matter of being able to bring it back to what do I want to spend my time doing here, and how do I want to be able to continue to work and continue to go through. So from that point of view, I feel like going through this exercise and now sitting down and writing out not only my quilting plan, but also my UFO plan. And the UFO plan will be, hey, if at the end of the year I've finished a couple of them net, I'm a happy camper. I can almost promise you that somewhere along the line there'll be more fit and more started. But it's recognizing that the process is different. It's not a blockage. It's just a matter of I had too much stuff that was like in the head, and I needed to find ways to be able to do it. So if my guild isn't interested in the UFOs that I have, I can always take to Quilters Classifieds, and there'll be a posting for that in the newsletter. But we're going to do a blog post today about the steps that I've done and kind of mesh this out a little bit. One of the other things that I need to do is I also need to become better with the video editing. So look for that coming, but that's another left brain thing. And right now I'm kind of feeding the right brain. And we'll go from there and see how that is. Thank you for tuning in. If you have a blockage that you need some help with creatively, let me know. Let me tell what worked for you. And we're going to continue to pull on this thread throughout 2022. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you another time. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, that was horrible.